Well, hi, everyone. This is Bill Farquharson and Kelly Malazzi. We're going to give you another short attention span webinar. This one is called 7 Things We'd Like to Say to Buyers. Oh, boy. I can hear you out there in Chicago, Kelly, just wringing your hands, ready to get it on with some buyers, huh?
I am wringing my hands and cackling.
7 things. First one, answer the dang phone. And dang was hard to put in there because I had so many different choices, but still, never understood this one. I don't get this. Answer the phone. And I get it. All right, look, here's my deal on this. And then, Kelly, I'm going to ask you for your opinion. But the guys that call just once, never call back, boom, fine. Throw them out. Don't return their call. Number 2, somebody calls twice. I get that. Don't call them back. But at some point, if I were a buyer, I would say, this guy has called me 4 times. He is doing something that 99% of the people aren't doing. I'm either going to pick up the phone or I'm going to call this guy back. All right, that's the number one thing I would say to a buyer. Draw a line in the sand and say 4 calls or more, I call him back. Kelly, what about you?
I completely agree, and I just feel like we've talked about this in some of our other webinars that etiquette has changed, and it actually, I feel like it's the demise of the civilization. I can't believe that people behave this way. It's really disappointing that they don't behave like civilized human beings and return phone calls. It is. It's astounding.
I get the fact that they're busy, though. I mean, I get that. But still,
yeah, sure.
To ignore everyone. The other thing I thought, by the way, this would be my 8th thing. I think you should have open hours. I think you should have, like, an hour and a half or 2 hours a month where anybody who's not a vendor can get an appointment. That's another one that I thought would be good. But that's part of, I think, answer the dang phone. Be loyal. Be loyal. I mean, I come from an era where the account was yours to lose. Even back then, we didn't really have cradle-to-grave accounts. But I think that the loyalty factor still existed. Now, I tell you, you're as good as the last job you shipped in, period. When did we lose loyalty, Kelly? What happened?
It's so hard to say because I feel the same way. I feel like in the early 90s, really up until about 2000, I felt like people would say things like, you've been so good to me, you've always been there for me. And those are the kinds of, they felt very symbiotic. The relationships were very, I used to call them mutually dependent. They needed us as much as we needed them. And somehow I think it was through technology and through, the advent of the Internet and all these things that opened up for people that made them feel like they had a lot more power, that information was power. And so all of a sudden, they just didn't value the vendors as much anymore. And I am lamenting about that one as well, believe me.
But you know what, Kelly? I'm not letting the vendors off the hook. I'm not letting the sales rep off the hook because there's a lot of complacency out there where the rep said, you know what, I got this book of business that I'm working. And as soon as you start saying book of business, it's an assumption, and that's the beginning of the end.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And if you're not doing something to continually remind the customer how good you are, you deserve to lose that account. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, next up, the buyer. Consider more than price. So, Kelly, what else would you consider when you're talking to a buyer, you're delivering a price? You say, listen, I just asked you to look beyond the numbers at the bottom of the page and also consider what?
Well, again, we still, we in the printing industry still want to view our work as a craft. So we want to think about what quality comes off the machine, even though the machines are, almost all the same these days, especially with regard to digital, but there is still, who's paying attention, who's making sure that the work is top-notch. So there's definitely quality. There's definitely, the ideas that the sales rep brings to the table and that whole kind of intangible, kind of relationship. So, and again, it's about solutions. How are they helping me solve my problems? Those are the kinds of things that I'd like to see them think about.
And I would ask for them to consider history. Remember that time last month when I rushed that job in and I drove it 200 miles to make sure that it got there because you didn't want the expensive FedEx? Remember that? Well, no, you don't because you just threw me out for a 5% savings. All right, here's another one. You know what, buyers? If your current printer is not bringing you new ideas, they should be gone. If all you do is you call them, then you should be firing them. If they call you, then refer to number 2. Be loyal. Simple as that. Look at that current relationship that you got. The one you say, we're happy with our current vendor, and then define happy. What does happy look like? What is that current vendor doing for you? Because if I'm coming in and suddenly they're lowering their prices, then you've been taken advantage of. If I'm coming in and I'm giving you new ideas, then you should be buying from me. And I don't know if there's anything more to say about that one, Kelly. So I'm going to ask you to move on to that next one, because this is one of yours. Read my blog. I love your blog. Read my blog and newsletter.
Well, we in sales, and hopefully a lot of you out there are doing this, you're trying to come up with new ways to connect with your prospects and your clients. You're trying to add value to that relationship and show yourself as an industry resource, an industry expert. So you go to this trouble and you set up this blog and you start putting the word out there, and you're using social media, and you're writing all these really creative, really witty, insightful things that your customers really would find value in. So please, customers, read it. When I send you a newsletter, please read it. Pay attention to what I'm doing, because the whole reason I'm doing it is for you. It's to add value for you. It's because the things I'm writing about would be of interest to you. So please, that's what we're saying to them. Read it. Do yourself a favor and look at the resources that are out there available to you and take advantage of them.
The next step is what I think we've talked about this just recently. Remember what I've done for you. Is that
right?
More? Is it just the job that I shipped in, or is there more to that one, Kelly?
No, I think, again, it's kind of that whole package. It's, I brought you a new idea, and it caught, and it afforded you the opportunity to save money and increase your response rates. Now, a lot of printers, and I think we even came up across this when we spoke at Graph Expo a couple weeks ago, people are a little bit worried about putting their ideas out there, because they say to me a lot, well, what happens if I give them that good idea and then they just take that idea back to their current vendor, and then they execute on that idea without me? Kind of that Martha Stewart, idea stealing concept. And the thing is, you just, that's going to be part of the equation. You just have to believe in karma and goodwill and all those things. But yeah, remember that I bent over backwards. Remember all the things that I've done for you, the ideas that I bring. I'm a package. Like, remember that.
But also, again, here, I don't want the sales rep off the hook, because if you're not telling your customers why they do business with you, if you're not reminding them of the things that you did, you are going to get thrown out on your ear. And to some extent, you deserve to. Don't assume that the customer knows how wonderful you are. You need to tell them how wonderful you are. And then finally, like Kelly's, tell your friends about me. Share the good news. What do you have to say there?
It's all about referrals, really. Who else would benefit from working with me? Who else would benefit from knowing about what I do? And when you think about what I've done for you, Mr. Customer, who else would benefit? And that's something that I think, these last two things, I think, again, you mentioned, kind of shame on us for not asking for the referrals. We always love it when the phone rings and they say, hey, Bill from Aspire4 told me to call you. He says you're fantastic. But we should be asking for those referrals as well. And kind of back to this whole topic in general, it really does speak to the concept of account reviews. I am astounded by how many of my customers give me a blank stare when I say account review. You should be having at regular intervals conversations with your customer about how things are going, and again, all of these things, why you're buying from me, what I do for you, that loyalty and all those things are wrapped up in that, and I don't necessarily know that we're doing it out there, folks, and we should be, for sure.
What's interesting about this, Kelly, to run through those 7 is the fact that this wasn't all on the buyers, and we pointed the finger at the sales rep about 1/3 of the time as well. So we like to sit back and say, well, look at what they're doing, look at what they're not doing. But the first place to look, I think, is in the mirror.
Yes.
So,
agreed.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you today for checking out this short attention span webinar. And since you have such a short attention span, we're going to let you go. Thanks, Kelly.
Great job, Bill.